everything is an opportunity for practice, as we know. So I want to invite you to use this time to begin to, if you haven't already, to enter into practice together, and we know how to do that. So you're invited to find a position that's comfortable for you, where you're alert, you're awake. You might notice whether you're drowsy or have any, whether you're kind of lethargic today or whether you're feeling energetic, and bring awareness in. For some people, it's helpful to close the eyes. For some people, it's helpful just to soften the gaze. For some people, it is helpful, and the option is an invitation is to bring attention inward instead of outward, which is a shift for us because we may be spending our day very attuned to what's going on outside our bodies. And right now we're bringing awareness inward and becoming more aware of our physical being. So I invite people to do exactly what we do for those who arrive a little bit early to our daily sit, which is to, as we sit, and simply pay attention to what's true for us right now, and let go of whatever we think should be true or we wish were true. Just notice, adopting the stance of being curious, just observing and noticing, neutral witness to what's happening. And maybe helpful just to go through a checklist of our physical beings, how we're feeling today physically. If you were to be asked how you're doing in your body today, what would you say? Take a moment to notice that. And in your emotions, what feelings are present? What's your state of mind? And what's the state of your spirit? And just take a few breaths, and then we'll turn it over to Lauren in a moment, just but we can begin from a place of being grounded in this place, noticing exactly how you're feeling in your body, in your emotions, your state of mind, and remembering that your soul and your spirit is present. Okay, Lauren, try again. There we go.
All right. Thank you, Mark, so much. Thank you, everyone. This too is practice, right? And, and we sometimes have to work with technological situations that are less than what we would want ideally. And so I want to thank you all for bearing with me. I did an update this morning that I think turned all the alerts back on that I had turned off. And so as soon as we are finished our session, I'm going to go figure out what's going on with that. But it's always great to get a lot of information, and I'm grateful to my screen. I use a screen reader every day. It's an essential part of my, ability to use a computer as a blind person, and screen readers are wonderful things. And sometimes when you have large Zoom calls and there's lots of alerts, it can be quite a lot. And that's, I think, something that practice also teaches us as well, is how do we tune out all of the distractions that are going on in our minds, either externally or internally. So, this too is practice, and that's part of the work that we are in, right? That not everything is, nor is it meant to be perfect. We show up in a world that is profoundly broken. Certainly on my heart, as I'm sure is on everyone's heart, is the situation in Ukraine, and prayers with the Ukrainian people and solidarity with the Ukrainian people amongst this just awful, horrendous situation, and just the ways in which we show up as human beings for ourselves and for one another. And it's my prayer that our practice really allows us to do that work of being able to show up fully and humbly as our authentic selves in a world that is so desperately in need of greater authenticity and sincerity and generosity, both of spirit, of soul, and of material resource. And as we are in this very complicated and complex time, we also have our calendar, which is ushering us into the second month of Adar. Today is the first day of Rosh Chodesh Adar. Tomorrow will be the first day of the month of Adar, Sheni. And in the Jewish calendar, when we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, that is because the first day of the 2 is the 30th day of the preceding month. And so in Jewish understanding of how our calendar works, we have a lunar solar calendar. The 30th day and the first day are considered to be Rosh Chodesh for the new month. And I believe I may have even talked about this the last time I led you all in practice. But Adar is known as Man Simchatenu, the time of our joy. Well, it's known as a time when we increase joy. Marbim Basimcha. I'm sorry, I got the expressions jumbled in my mind. There's Man Simchatenu is what we call Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, and Marbim Basimcha is what we are asked to do to increase in joy when the month of Adar enters. And I want to talk a little bit today about Purim, because now that we are entering the second month of Adar, we will be observing Purim, most of us on the 14th of Adar. Those in Jerusalem and a few other places on the 15th observe Shushan Purim, and that has to do with, mentioned in the book of Esther, that cities that were walled in the time of Yehoshua forward, including Shushan, observe Shushan Purim on the 15th of Adar. The vast majority of us observe it on the 14th of Adar, but either way, Purim is coming in a very short time. And one of the expressions that we often use when we talk about Purim is hanafocho, the idea of the world being turned upside down, but that in fact is the entire story of the Megillah. In some ways, I remember learning in graduate school that the Megillah can be thought of as a commentary or a comedy, that in fact there is so much comedic relief in the Megillah. And I remember even going through the Megillah once and trying to find all those places. But I really also think that we can think about the Megillah as not just a comedy. I wouldn't even primarily call it a comedy. I think it's much more complicated and multi-layered and demands of us a lot of questions we have to ask ourselves every year when we engage in the reading of the Megillah from a ritual mitzvah perspective and also from a moral perspective. But ultimately, one of the things that we are reminded of in the Megillah is that the world is truly upside down. And I can't think of a time in which that feels more true for me than the time we're living in now. Purim was the last time before the COVID pandemic that I was in a large in-person gathering. I remember that being the last large in-person gathering I was in for months. And then 2 years later, lots of us are in different places of return. I want to be very mindful of that, especially as a spiritual practitioner, that it is incorrect to say that we are all returning to some kind of normal, because normal, whatever normal even meant, is no longer, to my mind, a relevant category. We may be returning to increased in-person activity. We may be returning to an increased semblance of what our routines were prior to the pandemic, but the world is still extremely upside down. And there are so many of us on this beautiful call today who are all in different situations, have different risk tolerances, are living with lots of different constraints, lots of different things to consider, and are making the best choices for yourselves and for all of us and each other. So as we think about what does Purim have to teach us about this very upside down world? A world in which it feels as though nothing is as it seems. A world in which one of the things that we do as Jews on Purim is something called engaging in Purim Torah, which is humorous Torah. And I remember before the pandemic, I would often think of Purim Torah as this beautiful opportunity once a year for some comic relief, to bring in pieces of text, to think about Jewish communal issues, to think about specific things going on in my own life from a more comedic or humorous perspective, all in the fun of Purim as a holiday that asks us to question and asks us to grapple with the world as it is, as opposed to the world as it seems. And yet, I think it's deeper than that. I think Purim Torah is deeper than that. I think our practice can be deeper than all of that. As we are thinking about Purim and the Megillah and everything having to do with the joy of Purim, Purim, again, is the most joyous day on the Jewish calendar. It is the happiest day of the year. We also are thinking about perhaps the ways in which Purim is like Yom Kippur. We often call Yom Kippurim as a play on words. So in the liturgy of Yom Kippur, the brachot refer to it as Yom HaKippurim. So there has often been a wordplay talking about Yom Kippur as a day ki or k like Purim. And so I asked the opposite question: how is Purim like Yom Kippur? If on Purim we are thinking about our physical delights, on Yom Kippur we're thinking about our physical or spiritual connection, and those who fast on Yom Kippur may be thinking about the ways in which the physical ways in which their routines have changed for the day, no food, no drink, affect them in one way or another. And of course, not everyone is able to fast. And so too, actually, on Purim, though Purim itself we do not fast, traditionally the day before Purim is called Ta'anit Esther. And Ta'anit Esther is mentioned directly in the Megillah as this day of fasting and supplication before Esther went into Ahasuerus. And today it's now thought of as a day where we talk about the needs that people have in the community. And there's a lot of really interesting commentary on that, but I'm not going to go into that for the sake of time. What I am going to invite us into is a few minutes of sitting together and thinking about how do we navigate the tension and the paradox between this notion of marbim b'simcha for Purim, increasing in joy, the way in which Purim is traditionally led into by a solemn fast day, and the enduring lessons that Purim has and the Megillah has for us as Jews and us as human beings in general, for understanding the world that we live in now and understanding the world that we have been in historically. So in order for us to do that today, what I want us to do for a few moments together is a practice in which we are focusing on the self. We're going to do a modified blessing practice today. And I know we don't have a ton of time, so we're going to do a modified practice where we're going to focus on, if this is comfortable for you, to focus on the self as a vessel of blessing. If that is not comfortable, you can choose a benefactor. You can choose the entire world. I know many of us, that's where our hearts are. And using this practice, we can repeat phrases to ourselves that are blessings for safety and peace and ease. And I invite us to engage in that now. I'm going to be repeating a few phrases as we go, but I invite you to choose phrases that may be more resonant. I invite you to choose a phrase, or if this does not work for you, I invite you to sit in silent contemplation. And these phrases are anchors of blessing. And as we repeat them, we send some kind of energy, some kind of sense of calm into the world. May I be blessed with ease. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with joy. May I be blessed with ease. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with ease. May I be blessed with joy, with simcha. And I'll repeat those again. We're going to stick with the first three. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with joy. May I be blessed with ease. I invite us into some silence now. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with joy. May I be blessed with ease. As we enter our final minutes of a more abbreviated practice today, I gently invite you, if your mind, like mine, has wandered, to bring it back. May I be blessed with peace. May I be blessed with joy. May I be blessed with ease. As we close our sit today, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for joining me on this Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni as we begin to prepare our hearts and our souls and our minds for Purim with all of its multi-layered complexity. And as we begin to strive in whatever way we can, even in this very broken world. And I know for me personally, today it feels completely impossible to think about Marbim B'Simcha. But what do we do to try to manifest that, even in a limited way, even if it's only for a few moments? That is my bracha, that is my prayer for all of us, that in this month of Adar, we are able, in some capacity, to increase our joy as we move into our happiest festival. Thank you all, and I'll turn it back to Mark.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for your grace and for leading us and teaching us so profoundly today. Friends, we stay with the practice. This practice is not just when we're being silent or quiet. It's ongoing, including when things aren't going exactly according to plan. And it continues when we recite the Mourner's Kaddish, part of the practice as well. So if you're here, I encourage you to stay with the practice as we engage in creating a community for those who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or for whom it's the custom to recite the Kaddish, and to take it slow. For those who are in mourning currently, or if it's a yard site, or if it's your custom, to take a moment and maybe call up a memory, an image, association with the people that we're collectively remembering today. If you'd like to put their names in the chat box, you're invited to do that. For those who are not reciting Kaddish, not sharing names, what does it mean for you to be present, supportive, empathic? How does that activate your own grief in your life, whatever the source of that grief? And together we can share it. So I invite those of you who are reciting Kaddish to join me and rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together, and those who are not, to stay present and connected to those who are. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi. V'alma v'yivra chilutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayed b'al beit Yisrael v'agala v'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba Barak Olam Olamei Maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasi. Sadar v'yitalev v'yitalal b'nei b'kudsha b'rechu la'ela mikol birchata b'shirata ushbechata v'nechamata la'amiram ba'alma v'yivru amen. Yehei shlama rabba v'shamaya v'chaim avinu
Amen.
Oseh shalom miramav hu yaseh alinu v'yom Yisrael v'yachol
All your shred
tevel
Imru. Amen.
amen. And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to our teacher, Lauren Tuchman, Rabbi Lauren Tuchman. Thanks to Adi Stein for joining us and holding our space and this tech Mishkan sanctuary so beautifully every day. Thanks to our sponsor, Elizabeth Cohen, who sponsored our practice today in loving memory of John Solomon and Josephine Cohen. May their blessings be a memory. May their memory be a blessing to you, Elizabeth. And thank you so much for supporting our work and our practice today and lifting up their souls so beautifully. Friends, we're going to stay on for a few minutes for conversation with Rabbi Lauren Tuchman about the teaching for today, reflect on the practice and our experience. If you're leaving us now, and hope you'll join us tomorrow, I'll lead us in practice to sit into Shabbat together, second day of Rosh Chodesh Adar, and into the last Shabbat Pekudei, which is the conclusion of the book of Exodus, as our usual time at 12:30 tomorrow. So please join us to sit into Shabbat together. And okay, Lauren, thank you so much. As you said, this is what practice is all about, right? So, you know, I'd love to unpack how that all went down. There was a moment of discernment there where you realized actually it would be too distracting, right, to have the sound. And my first thought was, well, okay, we can work with the sound as just part of the practice. So I appreciated that you took care of that and came back. I think it worked well. So what I'd like to do is, you know, you taught so much in a short time there, Lauren. You know.
Yeah, I know. It sort of felt like it was all over the place.
No, but it's all good. It's all good. I can tell you what came up for me thinking about it. You know, when you said, you know, really hard to experience simcha given what is happening. And I was thinking about President Zelensky, thinking about who's Jewish. Here he is here's how he's spending his Rosh Chodesh Adar, leading his people, facing down death. And this is a man who was a comedian. He made a living helping people experience simcha. That's his role in the world. And now he is in this situation of showing incredible courage and strength. And of course, it's happening around the time of Purim, which, you know, the narrative of Purim is this imminent, you know, this dealing with this threat of imminent, basically genocide, which is what we're potentially witnessing in Ukraine right now. And so, in short, it makes me think about the connection between the seriousness, you know, being able to be serious and having the capacity to laugh, which I assume this guy does because he was a comedian. And that they're very much connected is what I guess I'm getting at here, because you also pointed out the connection between Yom Kippur, which we think of as the most, the most solemn, the most serious day, and Purim, which we think of as the least serious day, holiday in the Jewish year. So I wonder what you think about that, this connection. Yeah, we may not be able to experience joy, what we would call joy right now, but joy, I guess I'm saying basically that joy has a number of different faces, not all of which are kind of what we think of as the happy aspect of joy. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm articulating that clearly enough. What do you think?
Yeah, there's so much that I want to mention. I want to say first and foremost, that, like you said in the beginning, Mark, that everything is part of practice, and I'm noticing the thank yous in the chat. Thank you all for that, and for noticing, the technical difficulties. We deal with them all the time as people. But I will say that even with that, like, I noticed myself as I was teaching that I was feeling very overwhelmed, because even though I had solved the problem by switching to my phone for the time being, I absolutely plan to figure out what happened in my settings later today. But I noticed that I wasn't fully back in the place that I had been prior. And that too is part of practice. And I started to kind of feel like, oh, but I'm the teacher, I'm supposed to lead this, and here I am, I'm not where I want to be, and all of that. And noticing the result coming up for me of like, oh, but I have to do this, and I must do this, and and my energy was not where I wanted it to be. And so I want to just name it. That also connects, I think, to the question that you asked, though, about like, what does it mean to laugh in this time of incredible seriousness? How is it that sometimes we don't feel, sometimes we're not in that place. Like, I was not in the place that I wanted to be in. I was overwhelmed by the tech difficulty. I mean, we've all done it many times, but I still find that, like, when I have a technical difficulty, I get very upset by it. And it's like, I know that it's just a technical difficulty. It's not the end of the world. We all have them, but I know, and so too, I think that even in times of horror, such as we are experiencing right now with what's going on in Ukraine, it can feel like, well, who are we to talk about joy? Who are we to have this month of joy when there's so much? I mean, I feel the rage inside of myself when I read the news, when I read analysis. I listened to a webinar this morning about Ukraine. I just feel the rage and the choices that different state actors are making that I would make differently, and all of that's arising. But then I think about Zelensky and the fact that he is, it's so ironic how many parallels you can draw between what's going on there and the Megillah. And I listened to this very interesting show yesterday that was talking about competitive comedy as an actual sport, so to speak, in the former Soviet republics, and particularly in Ukraine, and the way in which teams come from all over the country to these competitions. What is that telling us spiritually? That there is this sense of competitive comedy. Not all of it is nice and polite or whatever. A lot of it is edgy. It is completely, as an American, looking at this from an American perspective, like, there's so much that I miss in all of the nuances that I just do not have access to. But I think about the fact that Zelensky had those skills that he's now using. And so too, how do we utilize the situations that we're in? How did Queen Esther utilize the situation she was in with the topsy-turvy? That's what I meant when I was talking about the Megillah as a comedy. Not that it's a laugh out loud funny comedy. I meant it in a technical term, right?
Like almost like a farce, like farcical.
Exactly. And that's the point of it. That's not to make light of the Megillah or say it's unimportant. Quite the contrary. Adarabba. It's actually to say there's a genre choice there. And that teaches us something.
Yeah. The more I'm thinking about this, the more amazing it is, really. We're thinking about, of course, you also can think about the role that humor has played for our people as a survival mechanism and as a way of dealing with the world. In the mindfulness practice, on this kind of very mundane level, we're paying attention to pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Okay, and let's type. So whenever we're talking about unpleasant, and gradations of unpleasant. Unpleasant can be anything from like I have an itch to, you know, I'm about to die, or I have a terminal illness, or, you know, there's this or that, you know, major issues that arise in life or in the world. And how do we maintain equilibrium in order to meet it? And I guess I'm wondering about the connection between the capacity to find humor as a way of staying with things not being the way we, you know, we would wish they might be, right? And being able to be calm enough, have the equilibrium to be able to meet the moment the way we witness this man doing right now. Not to put all the focus on him, because it's not just about him, but it's really, really striking to me about that connection between our capacity for humor and our capacity to be deeply serious and to be attentive to and not reactive to what's going on, so that we can stay with it. We can stay with it moment by moment.
I can only marvel because I feel so unable, having never had this kind of experience, to be able to even put myself in Zelensky's, like, I can't even imagine that mindset, right? Like, I can't even get there intellectually because it is so removed from my experience. But what I do think is interesting to think about is what you were saying about the capacity for seriousness and the capacity for humor. And I often wonder about myself if being as intellectually oriented as I am, I like to think of myself as a person who has a sense of humor and really enjoy and likes having fun and has a lot of joy. But I do wonder if sometimes when you are so steeped in the intellect, if you are somehow cut off from what makes, you know, the joy of the world what it is, right? To what, you know, humor is. It's so easy to be so serious. And, you know, I find that it's so easy for me to feel so outraged, just like as almost an instinctive response, like not even trying, but just like in the real rawness of being a human. You know, when we're in a cultural era that privileges that rewards that, right? And so part of what I think we're being asked to do, at least I feel this myself internally, is what do I have to learn from people who are experiencing real, serious, life-threatening crisis in Ukraine right now, how they are managing in all of the varied ways that's showing up, because we're all human beings and we all bring everything we have with us. But and when I say what can we learn, I do not mean this, God forbid, as a this is here to teach us something. I mean to say, like, what can we take with us in terms of the strength, the tenacity, the bravery, the steadfastness, the lack of equivocation, all of those really laudable things, right? And, you know, those of us who are in situations that are not like that right now, it's so easy for us to kvetch about, oh, COVID this, or I had a conflict with this person, or, you know, I read this many news articles today and I'm feeling totally like down on the world. But Jews don't have that. We don't have that luxury as Jews. And I think that's what I'm being starkly reminded of right now, right? That we don't have that luxury, that's why the rabbis ask us to marbim b'simcha.
Well, I'm really appreciating wonderful, very beautiful comments in the chat, which hopefully, Lauren, you'll be able to read, you know, to be, you know, to hear later. And I want to thank you. I know we needed to end a little bit early today, so I want to respect that. And thank you for your grace under pressure in this situation today. And thanks for sharing your learning and teaching with us. And you know, it's all fodder for practice, as we're told again and again. And it just reminds me to close here. It just reminds me of you know, what I think I've learned from my teacher, Rabbi Sheila Peltz Weinberg. You know, it's that when it comes to this kind of practice, we learn best, I think, by being in the presence of people who are actually manifesting the rewards of the practice. In the case of someone like Zelensky, I'll say, like, I'll have what he's having. I'll have what he's having. And same for you, Lauren. I'll have what you're having too. So thank you so much for making time to lead us today. I know you have to get to another class. I want to thank everyone for staying with us and being with us in this practice today. Wish you a Chodesh Tov, the blessings of this new month, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It's our usual time. We'll meet us and we'll sit into Shabbat together, which is always a great pleasure. Okay, everyone. Many blessings to
Chodesh
you.
Tov, thank you all so much. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you.